we are truly excited that we were able to work with the Longboat Key Historical Society and be able to be the facility for these lectures to take place. So thank you all for coming out tonight. There's just a couple of activities if you are hanging around the Key for the next month or two that I wanted to for you to be aware of. So I'm just going to take a quick opportunity to review some of the activities that we will be offering here as well. Next Tuesday night, we will have our 4th jazz concert of the season. It's called Feel the Beat. We took a different approach to jazz this year, since realizing all of the jazz concerts we've had out here in the past, that the musicians that play in all of the various bands, they all play in all different bands all over. They're all ringers, and we have such talented jazz musicians in the area. So we took the opportunity to pull the jazz professionals together to create the combos that would fit a particular theme that we could offer out here. So on next Tuesday, it's Feel the Beat, and it will be jazz music that will focus on percussion and with the beat, and they will be playing mostly jazz, but then some pieces from around the globe, so that you can get a little idea of the various rhythms that are across the globe. I think it'll be great fun. The musicians, the way that we have been approaching our concerts this year, are just thrilled. And anyone who has been to the concerts, the audience is really thrilled as well. And another activity, and the Longboat Key Garden Club wouldn't forgive me unless that I mentioned this particular event. So if anybody's in the garden club, you can report back I've said it. I'm mentioning it. We're having a great event out here. It's another collaboration with the Longboat Key Garden Club and the Art Center. We're having a Taste of the Keys and male fashion show. Now, I know you guys might think, what? Why would I? What? Who are the male models? Well, you know what? They are people that we all know and love on Longboat Key. I'll just tell you that. I think it's going to be a great time. We have 12 different restaurants that will be here from Anna Maria, Longboat Key, and the Circle. And so for $50, you'll have the opportunity, and it's a fundraiser for both of us, that you'll have the opportunity to come and taste the food of the various restaurants that we will have here, and then experience this male fashion show. Now, Matt Walsh from The Observer will be the MC, so I think he'll keep it lively. The models are some of the commissioners that you know and love, as well as other town dignitaries. So we think it's going to be a great time. And if you're interested in buying tickets, you can get tickets here, and there's many other outlets around on Longboat Key. So we encourage you, help support the Garden Club and help support the Longboat Key Center for the Arts, and put April 13th from 5:30 to 8:30 on your calendar. We still are offering classes in March. We will run a couple more other classes through April, but then after that, you know what happens out here. So that will be the end of our 4-week classes. But we're looking to see what we can do over the summer and some of the activities that we can bring back up in the fall again. So I just want you to pay attention to our jazz and come to the Taste of the Keys. And thank you so much for coming out tonight. And Tom, it's your turn.
Okay, thank you, Jane, and thank the Center for the Arts in Ringling for letting us have our speaking series here. And it's been successful, and we've had, for 5 years, we've been having the speaker series, and we've had some great speakers. We've had, let's see, who's some of our speakers? Come on, Steph, help me out here. Michael Saunders spoke. We had the professor from University of South Florida. Who is he? I'm stuck on this professor from University of South Florida. I can't remember.
Vale.
Pardon me?
Dr. Gabriella Vale.
Yeah, well, that was from New College. She was great. She talked about Mayan art and Mayan culture. And so we've had some great speakers, and tonight we have on the
Tom, the microphone is on, so why don't you use it?
we have two
You
more.
can move it up.
Okay. We have two speakers left this year, and they're both locals, and we're lucky to have them. Bill Carman of Carman Shoes and of the village here, and I remember he was always active in the Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts and other things to do with the village, the volunteer fire department, and a few times we talked and we were exchanging stories that sort of had, similar storylines. So some of the projects that the Historical Society's been doing is, one of the projects is we have an author named Amy Elder. And Amy Elder has done a series of books about Sarasota, and now she wants to do one about Barrier Islands. And so she asked if she could work with us and use our museum to get some of her material. So she got negatives and took them down and had them developed. She even bought a program for us called Photoshop Elements, and so we have that to use on our computer. And so that's one of the projects that we've been doing, and those photos that she had developed from negatives are now in an album at the Historical Society. So if you want to know what's new at the Historical Society, just go in and ask to see the latest pictures. I've been doing a project myself, which was to do video interviews of some of the people on the island here, and we have a lot of people that have memories and pictures and that we want to record for posterity. So we have I got Kent Chetwin, who is a historian who's been in the area for a long time, and we got him to do one, and then also a man named Al Jansen, who was at the trailer park in the center of the island from the 1950s. So that's something that we want to continue doing, and I need your help. If you have some ideas and you want us to single out, individuals to record, that's what we'd like to do. And so I talked to Ralph Hunter and Claire Hunter. They both said that they would be happy to do an interview. So we're going to just try to find the people that have been here, and then we'll try to get Bill Carman to actually put it down on videotape, this talk that he's giving tonight. And we are videotaping, and the camera was donated by our corporate sponsor, Michael Saunders. So we're lucky to have good corporate sponsors. The Observer gave us a computer. So we have a new Mac computer to use that we can use on membership and emails and for different purposes. So we have an upcoming benefit dinner, and the benefit dinner is at the Bayou Tavern, and we are calling it a night at the museum. So our plan is to have the museum open during the dinner, so people before the dinner and after the dinner can go in the museum, and somebody will be there to show you, some of these things that I'm talking to you about. And someone said, well, I can get a $25 dinner, at the Bayou Tavern. Well, the other $25 is a donation to the Historical Society. So we need to get money to help run the society, to pay.
And the $25 is tax deductible.
It's tax deductible. We're a nonprofit organization. So the tickets are available here tonight. They're available at the museum, and we would appreciate you supporting us and going to some of these events. And on the website, we have a blog. Now, I don't know how many of you use a blog, but it's just something new on the website, and our web person just said, it's something that we should add. It's something that just over time, I think people will start using it, but there's some additions to it. So if you go to the website, you see blog on there, just click on it, you'll go to the blog, and there are some entries on that. And then I want to wish you all happy St. Patrick's Day. I'll even tell you an Irish joke. So this Irishman walks into a bar, and there's this big fight going on, and he says, "Is this a private fight, or can anybody join in?" So that's my Irish joke. Hope I didn't offend anybody. Okay. We have Connie Hillwig, if you would please stand up. This is our new board member, and participated as a docent for a long time, and so she came to one of our meetings, and we just saw talent, and we said, Connie, won't you join us? So then we have a couple of other things that we have Steph.
Yeah.
I keep going to Steph because Steph said that she was going to, one of the projects that we talked about doing each year, the way the Historical Society works is it's by convention. And, like conventional wisdom, it's just the normal way that people do things. I even looked it up in the dictionary because I told somebody that was how we ran this, and it's a perfectly good use of the word. And it's like if you had a group of authorities in a room, it's what you would assume that they would decide. So we do that. That's how we run things. And each year we've talked about doing a field trip. Normal thinking that your historical society would have a field trip somewhere. So this is our attempt to have a field trip, and we're talking about going to the South Florida Museum. And we have the different times that are available. We're going to be talking about this. What we're going to do is get a sign-up sheet and try to get people for this next month in April to have people go to the South Florida Museum. We'll probably just have a caravan and go by cars. We're just trying to get a field trip off. So, do you have anything more to say about the field trip?
Oh, I think it's great, and that anyone who's interested can either come up to the museum, and you all know where it is in the Whitney Beach Plaza. It's right next to my shop. And if no one's there, I'm next door. You can come and talk to me, and we can sign you up.
And we're just, like I talked to the people at the museum, and they said if you go in the mornings during the week, it's possible you have school buses, bus loads of school children. So probably we'll do it in the afternoon, and if you do it on the weekends, it's kind of hectic. So they suggested we do it in the afternoons during the week. And then if there were a group of people, say, that didn't want to ride with somebody else or didn't have a ride, the limousine service said that they would take people for $25, to the museum and back. So I thought that sounded like it. So this is evolving, and anybody who's interested in a field trip, come by the museum and sign up and try it. The South Florida Museum, if you haven't been to it, it's one of the best representations of this area, in this area. I mean, you have a hard time finding anything any better. So then, let's see. I'd like to introduce the board. We've got Steph. We have Connie. We have... help me out here, come on. Abby. We have, who else is here? We've got
Vera and Bud.
Vera and Bud. We've got Shirley in the back there. We've got Ron Vale. And I think that's it in attendance tonight. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce to you, and a lot of you probably know him, Bill Carman, and we have in our audience here tonight, we have David Miller. He'll be the speaker next month, so everybody be sure to come out next month. And, sorry, Abby, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you were going to ask if the board member wanted to say anything.
There you go. Okay, does the board member want to say anything?
I went to a docent on Fridays, and a couple of weeks ago, when I was a docent, Nancy Eldridge walked in, and we started a conversation about old houses and old buildings in the area, and she had done a painting of the Helen Hull house. Pick it up over there, Nancy, and explain about the whole thing in about a minute.
Okay. But I'll try. I'll do my
Here.
best.
Here, would you like the, here, this is the full range.
Oh,
so just
all right.
go ahead.
It's strictly amateur,
been coming to Longboat, to the north end, to the Pass Apartments on North Shore Road for the last 12 winters. And quickly found the art center, had never painted a painting before, but have been painting ever since. And this is something that no teacher at the art center would ever want to admit I did with them, and I didn't. I did it all on my own. It was just something to do one time, and I decided that it would be nice to do a painting, a composite, an abstraction, a collection of the things I love about the north end of Longboat. And I still couldn't fit them all in, but I got a lot of them there. And I mean, around Beer Can Island is here with all its fallen down trees that my grandchildren love to climb on. And I love that I can walk from the Gulf to the bay, so I kind of had to get both of those in the same painting. I love the beach. I love all the things that people do on the beach. I love the bridge, which I can see right from my window all the time. And I can even have the Cortez Bridge there in the distance. I love when I'm coming over the bridge, but I can see Sarasota, but I don't have to go there. And, but one of the first, I loved the village, and I couldn't do the whole village, but the building that had always attracted me the most in the village was the Holt House. The first time I saw it, I thought it was a schoolhouse because I was deep in restoring an old schoolhouse on Cape Cod at the time, and it had a cupola, a belfry on the top. And so I thought, oh my goodness, there's another schoolhouse waiting to be restored, and I'm busy. But I'll get to it. And then I discovered, no, it wasn't a schoolhouse. It had been a private home, and it was going into disrepair. And it was about the time that they were talking about tearing it down that I started to do this painting, and I realized that it had to go in the painting. If no other building fit, that one had to. And so there it is, and that's why it's there. And I only wish I'd met Helen Holt and gotten to show her my painting. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. So I'm going to turn this over to Bill Carman. And, again, the only way we survive is through your support. And thanks for showing up tonight and helping to support us. Bill.
Thank you all for coming tonight. I've got several things I want to talk about tonight. One is a relationship with St. Arnold Circle, with Longboat Key. And this is something that I have done for the last 41 years. We had a store there for a long time. Before I start, I want to thank my wife, Judy Carman, because she's done such an excellent job in helping me. This is my wife. How did we come to Florida? Okay, everybody has a different way of telling everybody how they came. And it was my grandfather who first came down in the late 50s, and he went down to the mobile home park, the Gulf Shore mobile home park. And he got down there, and of course St. Patrick's Day was one of his big events. He loved to dress up and be in the parade. So one day he was walking down there, and of course if you've been down there, there's a little bench down there by the Mid Creek called the Liars Club. My grandfather was a Scotsman. His name was Ferguson. He walks down and they said, "Aren't you Earl Ferguson?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And they said, "Well, how would you like to join our club?" And he pointed to him. He said, "I'm sorry, I don't qualify." I said, "You're in." One of his favorite stories I love to share with people. He's from Michigan. He was from Flint, Michigan. We're from Ann Arbor, Michigan. One of our favorite stories was he was talking about fishing. And everyone has a fishing story. This is one of the most unusual ones I've ever heard. He was up in the winter fishing for sturgeon, and he cut a hole in the ice. And as he hooked the fish, it started to pull. And as he got up, he realized it was much too big for the hole, so he cut a bigger hole. So lo and behold, they went to pull it, and the fish jerked. Pulled him down through the ice. Now, he couldn't find that hole. But his mother said, Earl, be smart. Remember, everything you can, you're going to survive. Well, he remembered where he cut the hole the year before and came up that. That was my grandfather. He was great now. We moved into the village in 1969. One of the things we found out was the same atmosphere that we have today is here. Sure, we have more peacocks, we have more people, but it's friendly, it's open, it's a lot of fun. You have that peacefulness that you have. Well, one of the things I used to do when I first got down here, I loved to jog at night, okay? I hadn't talked to any neighbors. So when I jogged, I would jog on the pavement. I always went barefooted. One night I was between the gas station and the old post office, and I was going down there. Now you're looking at the person who owns the longest broad jump record in the world, because my right foot came down on the diamondback rattlesnake.
Oh, no.
And he covered the length from my toe to my heel. And I took off in the air. No one knows I own the record, but I own the record. Well, about 2 weeks later, I saw the snake. And I want you to realize this was half the width of the road. And he was going into the mangroves opposite the bank. So I stopped jogging at night. Shortly after that, the old timers told me, they've been here a long time, said, well, you never go out at night without the flashlight. I said, why? He says, that's when the large snakes come out and they feed on the rodents. I said, now you tell me. At that time, we had well water, we had septic tanks, a number of things happened. And one of the things that happened was so interesting. My wife calls me one day at work, and she says, you gotta come home. I said, why? She said, we've had a turtle crawl through the carport, we've had a raccoon run through, and now there's a snake, I think it's a rattlesnake, under the dryer. So I came home, and luckily the snake was gone by the time I got home. A friend and I, we actually got together that weekend, and we completely remodeled the carpet, turned it into another room. So that was out of the way. That was one thing we took care of. Going back and forth to work on the circle is a 10.5-mile drive. So I have spent over 275,000 miles on driving back and forth over 41 years. I saw every condominium you built. I saw all the road work and everything. I could almost drive it in my sleep. The speed limit back then was 55 miles an hour. We had one police officer and very little traffic. It will take you 15, 20 minutes to get this out there. And that was interesting. One thing I had a chance to do, and I don't want to forget this, I had a chance to see Longboat Key from many angles. By boat, by plane, and our Boy Scout troop, one of the things the boys had to do to pass their hiking river edge was walk 20 miles. So I came home from work one night, we left at the gas station, walked to the bridge and back, and we were beat. But we saw Longboat Key a way that we'd never seen it before. I haven't seen it because I've driven it so much. And it was very, very interesting. We had Harvey's gas station. He was a saint. This man could fix anything. If you had car problems, he was there for you. Then later on, several other people took it over and did a wonderful job. And of course, now it's vacant. We had the foodway. We had the pharmacy. I don't know if any of you remember Mrs. Van Atta. Mrs. Van Atta used to collect dead rattlesnakes and make lampshades out of them. And belts and other things. She lived in the village. Some very interesting things happened on Longboat Key. One night I was watching television, national television. I can't remember if it was Peter Jennings or Washington. Okay. They said, this new law has been developed on this little town in Florida, and we can't believe it's actually being enacted. And they said, it's a leash law for cats. Now, if anyone's ever seen a cat on a leash, they'll claw you to death. And it was Longboat Key. Well, within 48 hours, it was rescinded. We didn't want to be the laughing stock of the United States. But a lot of people don't know, was right after that came out, there was another law on the books. Before I tell you about this law, I'll tell you about a law they have in Sun City Center. Out there, if you want to have your drapes changed in color, you have to go before a committee. Inside your home. The other law they were thinking passing was for the men. You're going to be allowed 3 inches of skin from the top of your sock to your shorts. Never came about. Dress code. Never came about. Thank goodness. One of the things that we had, a gentleman named Zeke Epstein, he proposed and raised funds for the bicycle path. One of the things he said is it's too dangerous riding on the highway with a bike. Because if someone has to swerve off the road, you have, so we put the bicycle path over there. He got the bike path built, and it was one of the appeal uses today. But a lot of people still ride on the highway. Most of the bikers with the 10 speeds and so forth. But he proposed back then, he thought it was too dangerous, too risky to ride on the highway. So that's why they built the bicycle path. And now it's both a bike path and a walking area. Calusan Indians, okay, this is an interesting story. We're going to go back to the time of DeSoto. Now, what I heard was DeSoto had landed his ship around where the Westchester condominium is. He had sent several of his scouts, and one was Juananesca, which the street is named after, around the north end of the key, to do some surveying. But he did some surveying, took some measurements and so forth, and DeSoto said, go back again, I want you to take some flora and some different things. So he went back again. They took the longboat they had up through the bayou. And when they got there, they looked over and they saw some Indians. And they were, at the time, they didn't know they were Calusan Indians. But they were very tall. And they had their hair up high, matted with fruit. So it made them look even taller. Their face was painted, but it was for decoration. It wasn't for war paint. Juananesca thought they had been spotted. So they quickly parked at Longboat Key, behind where Whitney Beach is now, beat it back to the beach and left it. Got back to DeSoto and said, you're not going to believe these people are giants. And he says, how big? He says, without the hair, between 7 and 8 feet tall. Remember, this is back in the 1500s. And DeSoto said, yeah, right. So he wrote it down. Years later, they found the skeletons, and they were between 7 and 8 feet tall. They also found records that they used to canoe from Longboat Key and outward to Cuba and back. And canoe. So it was very interesting. Of course, unfortunately, they died out over the years, and there's not a whole lot said about them, but they came right up here, and Juananesca was very intimidating when he saw them. Longboat Island Chapel, okay? Very interesting, one of our first churches. Talked to the secretaries when I had the Boy Scout troop, and they said, I think it was haunted. It's really haunted. And they said, there are times during the day that we just can't stay in that church. We have to get out. So I said, all right. So one night I had to do some work there by myself for the Boy Scouts, and I was upstairs. And I tell you, I've been everywhere. I've been through the Vietnam War. I've been everywhere you can imagine. Some of the worst places in the world. That night, there was a feeling that came over me that I could not explain. I had to leave. They thought maybe you had been over an Indian burial ground. I'm not sure. But that was a feeling. It wasn't just one woman. There were several secretaries that told me that story. It was in broad daylight. There was no noise. There was no sound. Just a very good opinion. And that's one of the interesting things about the key. Okay, my sons had several hobbies. And my older boys loved insects, the study of entomology. And they wanted to have, of all things, a beehive on Longboat Key. So we went to town and said, can you have a beehive out here? And they said, yes, you can have a beehive. So I said, okay, boys. We went out and we bought 200,000 Italian bees. And we had to load them up in the truck and bring them out. Well, we're sitting in this truck with our headgear on, our mesh, our gloves and so forth, driving down, go out to Mexico, and unfortunately, there are two ladies walking on the sidewalk with perfume. I have never seen two women run so fast in my life. So we took off around that corner. We're coming up Longboat Key, and I noticed one of my headlights was on. So I called the police department because I knew they were going to pull me over. I said, this is the problem. If you pull me over, I will stop. But I've got 200,000 keys in the bag, and they might take out your deputy. They said, we're going to call him. They said, don't worry. You got a clear shot. So we took them home, we unloaded them, took the truck back to my friend Ralph Kraft's. Thought we had all the bees out, but it was parked under his still house. The next morning he said, I'm going to kill you. You had bees in the house last night. So we had this beehive, and the boys had a company called 3C's Apiary that raised and sold honey. And if you've ever studied insects, the bees are fascinating. These were Italian bees, they were African bees, and They were very agile and very friendly, so to speak. My other son was a surfer. Used to surf on Gulf side. I told him, I said, Matt, I said, don't surf at night because that's when the big fish come in to feed. He says, no, Dad. He says, we have a rule. Of course, surfing is the only sport that you have to have bad weather for, because that's where you get your big waves. He said, we have a rule. When the sharks get as big as the surfboards, we come in. I said, you're crazy. He said, Dad, we love it. So those were a couple hobbies they had. Right after we moved here, I met some of the younger guys and I said, why don't you join the volunteer fire department? We don't have any paid members. We have no department out here. And, it's kind of a camaraderie thing, social club, we get together. Well, ever since every man is this big, we always wanted to ride in a fire truck. Well, now we get to drive it. So I go over and I join the fire department, take the training. Back then, we didn't have any water on the key, any water to go ahead and use as fire hydrants. So we had a tanker. We used to put all the water in the tanker, 1,500 gallons, and sometimes we'd have to draft out the canals if we had that fire. So we had to train and train. And we went through all the courses. We had all the different trainings. If you look at the far corner, you're going to see a jumpsuit with a pair of boots under it. Okay, what the volunteers had to do back then, now we were on 24 hours on, 24 hours off. This happened for 3 or 4 years. Our budget was $100,000. No one was paid. They're talking about pensions right now. No one was paid. One of the things that was so interesting was the original phone system we had. When you had a fire, it would ring in your home and it would ring steady. And you pick up the phone. Well, Art Bianchi, who was one of the original building inspectors, he picked up the phone and by mistake he said, Bianchi residence. Every fireman that picked up the phone said that's where the fire is. And they all went to his house. Luckily it wasn't a serious fire, but that was what happened when we had the phone system. And years later, we got the plectron radio system. I'll tell you a little bit about that. One of the things we had to do, we had to park our cars at night facing out. We would always have our keys right out where we could grab them. We had the jumpsuit with the boots. Okay. There were 3 of us that lived in the village, and we had the best record of response that you've ever heard of. Between the time we got the call, and as I was getting dressed, jumping in it from a dead sleep, my wife was picking up the number of the address, and I was out. The time we got the call, and we live on the corner of Cedar Point Center, the time we started the fire engine and left the building was 96 seconds.
And they meet on Broadway and almost.
Yeah, we were very proud.
Great.
We didn't crash, but once we got over there, then everybody in the village knew there was a fire because the first one had to pull the alarm. That was in case anybody didn't get the phone call. We take off down there. Years later, we got a plectron radio, which was fantastic. We kept it in the house. It had two batteries. Whenever we got a signal, it would come in. If the phone system was out, it didn't make any difference. Nothing could stop that signal when we had the fire. I kept it in my store at the Circle, and I got calls. Sometimes I had to go to the store to go ahead and read them. The best call I ever got was I was coming up Longboat Key. I had a plectron next to me. I was coming home from work. I got this call, and it said, "Man has fallen down the stairs, Longboat Arms." I grabbed my bandages. I looked up. I'm 50 feet from Longboat Arms. I pull in. The woman is still on the phone. She said, "That is great service." We have a lot of fun with that. One of the things we did, one of the first fires we had, and Tom Myers can remember this, we had it called Lands End. And it was the fire involving Michael and Neil Saunders' home. We got there, and Neil was handing Michael out the window. He said she's a very sound sleeper. And what had happened is, he had got up, and he heard things, and they had the door to the bedroom shut. And he went there, and he was smart. He put his hand on the door, he could feel the heat. So he shook her, got her awake, took her out, handed her out, and that unit burned up. But she was alive and well, and that was the first ones I can remember. That's how we met Michael Saunders. And as you know, she went on to go bigger and better things and done a great job. Well, one of the things we found out as we were going is we needed a rescue squad on Longboat Key, but we didn't have one. Now, where was the nearest ambulance? On D Ridge. Okay? But it was Hawkins Funeral Home. So if you made it or didn't, they still made out. So one of the things we did, we decided we'd go ahead and we'd start a rescue squad. Now, Dave Bianchi was the rescue captain. He started it. We bought an old International Scout, refurbished it, went through the training courses, did all the things we had to do, and we had a lot of calls. I think the last year that I was on the team, we were given $1 a call. Finally, they paid us $1 a call. And I had 92 calls the last year I was in the fire department myself.
And they paid you in silver dollars.
They paid us in silver dollars.
So that when they spent them and it went into the community, all of these rescue men and firemen were paid in silver dollars, so you could see the effect. So that if you were paying for something and it was a silver dollar, you knew it was coming back into your community, which is a great idea.
So now we got the rescue squad. There was a problem. We were getting calls, and people were saying, we're not getting calls. So I went to find out what was wrong, and sure enough, at the time, we did not have a full-time dispatching system on Longboat Key. They went off duty at 5 o'clock at night. They didn't come on at 8 the next morning. Meantime, Sarasota Sheriff's Department handled our calls. The problem was, they didn't log our calls, and our calls were not a priority to their calls. So many times, we were not getting the calls. So I went to the chief, and I was captain of the North Station at the time up here. I went to the chief and I said, Bob, Bob Cannon, I said, we've got to do something about this. He says, I've tried, Bill. I said, can I try? He says, go ahead, do anything you can. So when I talked to the city manager, I said, no, you can't do it. I talked to the commissioners, oh, we've tried, we just don't have the money for it. So I decided, geez, if we don't get this done, people are going to lose their lives out here. So I decided to do something that is beyond city government. Went to Don Moore, the editor of the Islander. I said, Don, we've got a problem here. He said, what is it? He gave me a full-page write-up. Within 48 hours, Longboat Key had a full-time dispatching system. Because the wives of the husbands who were commissioned at the time said, you will do this. And they did it. And one of the things we did early on, we used to have one phone number. It was 383-3727, it's an emergency number. And one of the things we used to tell the people we need to do was to we'd give them a sticker and put this on your phone. And go ahead and make the call and come and get us. Of course, later on they went to 911. But as we went over, we had a number of things we wanted to do. One of the things we did, we actually had a rescue boat that was on davits. It was a rubberized boat with a motor on it. We had devised a plan where we could get into any place on the key within 30 minutes, offshore and so forth. Unfortunately, they don't have that anymore. But we really had a good volunteer fire department. We really were able to do a lot of things. And gun-ho, let me tell you, some of those first fires, we should have been shot because we were so gun-ho we didn't know what to do. We one time boarded a boat that had just been refueled. Half enveloped in flame when we put it out. I was up on Braden Beach, and Rocky Brown, who was one of the police officers, you guys got to get out. He left. Too dangerous. And after that, several of us, we started taking the tactics and courses through St. Petersburg College so we could become better officers in the fire department. I'll never forget the one night we had a chief, an assistant chief, myself, North Captain, rescue squad captain, and a South captain. And if you were going to leave the key, you would notify the next in command. The one night, I was here at home, and Bob Cannon called Jim Purser, the assistant chief, and said, I got to leave. He left. Something happened with Jim, and Jim had to go. So Jim called me and said, Bill, the island's yours. And I said, okay. I was in charge of the whole island. Well, 20 minutes later, big fire at Sea Place. Luckily, I'd been taking the tactics course, so we got down there, and we had to pull the wall down and put a stop on it in a hurry. But I'll never forget, I said, if anything was going to go wrong, it was going to go wrong that night. And it did. And we got down there, and we were able to put the fire out. Some of the interesting things, some of the calls we had that you never hear about were the attempted suicides we had. The police department used to tell us when there's attempted suicide, wait till we get there first. Because quite often the person that's going to commit suicide doesn't mind taking somebody else with them. So we learned from that. That was what we call Code 13. Several of the more enlightened cases, we come to a place, and there would be this gentleman, 70s or 80s, had a heart attack, he was dead on the ground. We looked in the back, there was this 25-year-old girl. This happened more times than not. But it did happen on the key. We ran into that a lot. One night we had an attempted murder on one of our police officers. They'd set flares up on the beach. We went out there and said, don't go out there. They're trying to kill a police officer. This is back in the 70s. I don't know if anybody remembers the Michelson murders we had in Key. I was with the rescue unit, went there. We went to that call, and they were the ones that owned the nursery. We got outside, we saw the man in his pajamas. He was laying out on the ground, and thought he had a heart attack. What had tipped him off was people had come over for dinner that night. Came over to have dinner, and they found this gentleman in his pajamas outside. So we know what happened. Turned him over right away. I could tell it was a gunshot wound. So we called the police. We got the investigation there. Wayne McCann came down there. We went into the house. The doors weren't locked. There was a terrible struggle in the bedroom. There was blood all over the wall. The woman had been knifed. And I found the knife under the bed. We couldn't find the body. McCann said it's still in the garage. And we found her body wrapped up in newspaper in the trunk of the car. So that was one of the more gruesome calls we had. We had the Al Wow assassination that happened at the south end of Longboat Key. That was where the fact that our family had known him because he was a sailor. And apparently what had happened is Al Wow was an attorney and also president of the New York Crack Association. When he left, they paid him $100,000 a year, but he could not go back into racing for 10 years. 6 or 7 years later, he started racing up in Florida. And they found him on the golf course that night, walking his dog. So that was, and they never actually found who had killed both couples. Next to a little more lighthearted, a little more unusual calls. The first one happened one night we got at Conley Beach. Okay. We get down and said, there's man's unconscious. We go to Conley Beach, we walk in, everyone's having a buffet. As they're having a buffet, we're looking for this man. Well, he's hanging halfway beneath the buffet table. Okay, legs up, but he's breathing. We're looking around at people having dinner, they're having soup, like nothing's happening. Meantime, our rescue squad, our vehicle's out in front. The valet is so upset because we're parked in the front with his ambulance. And he says, the ambulance isn't moving until we get this guy. So we go in there. Now these people were callous. The guy was not really in terrible shape, but he was still under. The people were in the buffet line doing this. So that was an unusual call. They turned out all right. The next call was a little more unusual. We get a call down at Country Club Shores. We get down there, go in the bedroom. Gentleman laying on the floor, 2 martini glasses next to the bed, laying in the nightgown. Both probably in their mid-70s. Come up and the man inside, he's completely blue. He's been without oxygen for a long time. We cannot revive him. So we're waiting. Charlotte Hewitt was our nurse on duty. She's talking to him and says, we have a problem. I said, what could be more a problem than the man's dead? Oh, there's more of a problem. This is not her husband. Oh. Apparently what had happened is this woman was down with this man's wife. She was in the hospital in Venice. And he asked her to take her out to the hospital, to the airport. So they stopped off, had a couple of drinks, and one thing led to another, and he expired. So we got to get out as fast as we can, right? So we're getting ready to go, and as we're getting, this gentleman from England comes over, house coat, ascot, from across the street, and says, by Joe, what's going on? The man says, well, that's my house. Your house. Now, he had come home early and was shacking up with the lady across the street. So these are some of the things that happen. A couple things I'd like to share with you that might help you in the future. And these are things we found out when we had the rescue squad that really worked. When you go home tonight, take a look at the number outside your residence. This is a minimum size. If you can't find your house, neither can the police, the rescue squad, or the fire department. And a number of people have died on the key because of that. You have to find the number to get to the house. And some of these homes are pretty. We went to some of the county meetings where the numbers were no bigger than my thumb. And we're running all over trying to find them. And it is very hard to find people when you don't have the right size. The bigger, the better. Another thing you might do is, next to your phone, put the address of your home. Now, let's say you have a visitor come over, and you get sick or hurt or something. They're going to call 911, but they can't remember your address. So if the address is by the phone, they know where to have ambulance come. Second thing, you have to make an emergency phone call. Never hang up until they've given you the go-ahead. Because in many cases we have over the years, we have people call, gave us all kinds of information, the man's age, everything, but hung up before they gave us the address. So we lost it. Have any information on medication close by a phone, so they know what you're taking. So if paramedics get there, if you're unconscious, they're not going to know what to do. This can be very helpful. One tip I'm going to give you, and this works out. If you can remember one word, it's called dog, okay? If you ever get sick, and usually when we get sick, we have the flu or something, the first room we go into is the most dangerous room in the house, the bathroom. Now what happens when you go in that bathroom and you faint? That means the lack of blood flow to the brain. When you faint, you don't brace yourself. You go down hard. The worst room in the world, worst room in the house to fall is the bathroom, because everything's hard. So when you go in there, always go into the bathroom as a dog, on all fours. Because if you fall, you're going to fall a short distance. You're going to fall on your stomach. If you start to vomit or aspirate unconsciously, it can knock you down the windpipe. It'll save your life. I had this happen to me in Michigan right after I completed the course. And once you're laying down, you feel faint, once you're laying down, as soon as that blood doesn't have to go up against gravity, it'll restore you, you'll be back on your feet again. So I hope that'll help somebody. Now the Boy Scouts. That's something I've really enjoyed. Mary Ann Namack came to me back in the 70s and says, we need something for the boys out here. We need a Boy Scout troop, a Cub Scout pack or something. And I grew up in Michigan where we had the YMCA program. And one of the things I loved about the YMCA program, you had to earn whatever you did. Now this is going to be hard to believe, but in the YMCA program, years and years ago, they don't do this anymore, at the age of 6, you went to camp for 2 weeks. 7, and so forth. You learn how to make your bed, how to set the table, all these things. And the older you got, the more things you got to do. The 100-mile canoe trip, the overnight horseback riding, but you had to earn all these things. They were wonderful for people. Well, this was the same thing the scouting program goes in. We had the Cub Scouts first. We went through the Cub Scout program 3 or 4 years. Boys had a wonderful time. We had a lot of fun with that. Many of the boys learned the highest award that you can earn in Cub Scouting, which is called the Arrow of Light, Boy Scouts at the Eagle. After we went through the Cub Scouts, we advanced into the Boy Scouts. And one of the things I found out is that I've got to motivate these kids, because a lot of people think Boy Scouts are very, they go out and cook and do fires and this is it. So I tried to encourage these guys. I said, there are a lot of famous Eagle Scouts out there. And they said, well name a couple. Okay. I said, there was this young man, he was interested in Boy Scouts, and he was trying to get his merit badge in aviation. So Scoutmaster hooked him up with a crop duster. I taught him how to fly and so forth. The young man says, geez, I love aviation, I think I'll make this a career. So he went into the service and flew and went into test piloting and so forth. And he went a long, long ways. And the boy said, well, who is he? I said, "What, you ever heard of Neil Armstrong? They said, yeah. And I said, okay, now this is one of the match stuff. I said, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Scott Collins are all Eagle Scouts. What did they name their craft when it landed on the moon? The Eagle has landed. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of Boy Scouts do with Eagles. Another fellow who was very interested in scouting was a young man who was interested in photography. His uncle gave him a 16mm camera. Took pictures of the kids. We did some Indians and the cowboys and everybody. And he went on and on. They said, well, how far did he go? I said, well, did you ever see E.T. or Jaws? Steven Spielberg, another Eagle Scout. Now, with Eagle Scouts, you never say former, because you're always an Eagle Scout until the day you die. No former, always an Eagle Scout. And so it really encouraged young people to extend themselves and go beyond what they thought was capable. And we had several boys that took the life-saving courses and so forth, and really had a wonderful time in it. One of the things we did, because Longboat Key doesn't have a lot of hiking trails, we got into canoes. We did over 700 miles of canoes in the state of Florida. We did a lot of canoeing. Jim Nason had the boat dock down here, let us work with canoeing, let us work with different projects, life-saving, and so forth. And a couple things happened that were really interesting. One of the things that happen when you're dealing with young boys, they're always going to test you. Always going to test you. Well, one night we had one of the boys, and we told everyone to bring. He didn't bring his knife, fork, and spoon. So that's all right. You can eat with your fingers. Just wash your hands. He said, well, don't you have any extras? Yeah, but you're not going to get them. None of the boys are going to give them to you because you were told to do this. Well, he didn't starve. He ate and so forth. But he was one of the best boys. After that, for the younger boys, says, if you don't bring them, you don't use them. And it was one of these great things that happened. We went to Patrick's Air Force Base one night, and we had the young boys up there, and two or three of them were wound up. So I had to do exercises, and we go sleep overtime. The next night, I said, man, I cannot go through this again. So I called all the boys together. I said, okay, here's the deal. If you two young guys don't go to sleep tonight, make a lot of noise, I'm not going to make you do any push-ups or any exercises, but I'm going to make all the older boys do them for you. First out of one of the older scouts says, if you make any noise, I'll break your arm. That quieted everybody down, peer pressure, worked like a charm. One of the things we did, there's a picture, if you've been down and seen the old boat dock down here, we practice all kinds of things, capsizing and so forth. I said, because we went down the Peace River, we had alligators and we had water moccasins coming from Michigan. We didn't have that up there. So if you went overboard, it wasn't really a situation where you could really get hurt. I would arrange the canoes. The lead canoe I would always be in. The second most experienced scoutmaster in the last canoe. We would take every other canoe and have someone that had a life-saving merit badge, different merit badges. One time, we ran into something. Luckily, we were prepared to take on. We had a basket of water coming down. Second canoe came around the corner. Man in the middle came up against the side. Water moccasins on the side. Comes almost to his head. They bail. One of the things we taught the boys to do, you have to get everybody out of the water in 90 seconds. And we trained and trained. Everyone had a whistle. We blew whistles. We got everybody up. We had to get one of the canoes out of one of the trees. We had to work around 2 more water moccasins. It was a very hectic day. But I told the boys, I said, when you tell your parents what you've done, they're not going to believe this, but we can all back it up. It was a very exciting trip. But the practice, the preparedness, the Boy Scout model is be prepared. And they did a wonderful job. And these are 11, 12-year-old boys. They're doing these things. We had the opportunity to go to film out in Mexico. And one of my sons had a cookie in a plastic sealed lot in another case in his backpack. And that night, the bears came into camp. They smelled at a long distance and ripped open the backpack right next to his hand. So that's when we put everything in bear bags. And who would have ever thought that would happen? But we were very fortunate that night. Film was a great experience. It taught you how to live off the land for 10 days. We didn't have cold water for 10 days. We cooked, we carried everything in. One of the boys tried to get away with it. Everyone's supposed to carry the same amount of weight. We noticed this one young guy was really jumping up and down. He was carrying all the toilet paper. So we took care of that. We loaded him up with other things. One of the interesting things about St. Armor Circle is, tell you a little background with our shoe business, our family. My dad started his first shoe store back in Michigan in 1949 on the University of Michigan campus. He had it for 18 years. He brought Jacobson's to Florida, and he told them that they needed to buy our book out of Longwood and so forth, and he knew the family, Mr. Rosenfeld, very well, and they had a wonderful relationship. One of the things that happened was, back in 1964, Dad had one hobby. He liked to sail. And the only day he could sail was on Sunday because the store was open 6 days a week. So he asked me if Mom asked me if I could get the boat ready. We got the boat ready. And it rained out 7 days, 7 Sundays. And he was miserable. And 2 days off that year. My grandfather came down, and my grandfather said, "What's wrong?" He says, "Well, you know, I just can't do anything." And he says, "Well, you can't complain. You live in a free country." He says, "What does the free country have to do with the weather?" I said, "You can move wherever you want. You can open stores all over the United States, California, Hawaii, and so forth." And he says, "You know, I've got this business. I've been here 18 years. It's good business." He said, "I'll tell you what my father told me." He said, "Earl," he said, "you don't have to move. You can stay there or you can move. But remember, whatever you do, whatever decision you make, don't ever complain again because you made it." So my dad did what they call pioneering. He sold the business, moved to Florida, and opened up that store in 1965, and had a chance to sail. The wonderful thing for us is we were able to live on Longboat Key at the young age of 26. And we've been here for 41 years, and it's been a great, great experience. I joined my father in 1969 at the store right after he got the service. And about that time, the circle would have most of the shops actually had the owners in them, so they were shop owned. When you have the owner in them, there's a lot more care when you're building, when you're clientele and so forth, rather than just hire people and have them set up. Behind our store, there was a parking lot this woman had up for sale. She wanted $35,000 for it. So my dad went to the group and he said, the association out there, he said, "You want to buy it?" And I said, "Well, we can't buy it because if you buy that lot over there, all the people will shop over there, they won't come over here." And my dad said, "No." He said, "What they do is they'll go ahead and park there, but they probably won't buy here first, they'll walk all around the circle." A month later, this man realized he was wrong, and then the woman didn't want to sell. So 25 years later, the landowners on St. Armor Key bought it for over $1 million. Our tax did it for 28 years, and that parking lot is not owned by the city. It's maintained, but it is owned by the landowners out there. So it picked up 254 parking spaces. At that time, we had grocery stores, we had pharmacy out there, we had 2 gas stations, we had a lot of different shops out there. And there were 5 and 10 dime store. We had 17 more dress shops than we have today. In 1976, on St. Armor Circle, there were 103 businesses. Today, out of that 103, there are 8 left with change in ownership, only 2 with the original names. That'd be Columbia Restaurant and Bennington Tobacco Shop.
What was the second one?
Bennington Tobacco Shop, under the same ownership. 1980, the Circle Association was formed out there. In 1996, I had my first car show. Now, there was a problem that we ran against with heavy traffic during the season. Okay. This was not my fault. I picked September because it was the slowest month of the year to have a car show out there. I said, it's not going to affect traffic. Not going to be a problem. We had it for a number of years. I went to the businesses and I wanted to know if they had an increase in business for that period of time. The least amount was 11%, the most was 44%, so it's very practical. Unfortunately, years later, they moved it up to November. They have car shows now, which I didn't agree with because you've already got the people that are shopping. You don't need any more people coming in. And like this last month, I think they had 5 shows out there during the season. It really ties up traffic. But that was not my idea. When I was president of the association, we always worked very closely with the Key. In 2001, we had our 75th anniversary of St. Armand Circle. The original buildings where Cafe de Rope is, where John and me had his real estate office. I was on the committee, and they knew I liked cars and parades. They said, would you take care of the parade? Oh yeah, this is no problem, right? Big problem. I have got to get costumes for all the commissioners and all the county members and so forth of the 1920s. So I went through the Oslo, through the Players Club. Then I had to get 25 automobiles that were running, that were built back in 1920s. Okay, that's a pretty big task to take. But we had to get 2 elephants. Because John and me had 2 elephants. So we decided to pay $1,500 for 2 elephants to walk from Bird Key to the circle. 10 days before it starts, the elephants have to pull out. They've got another Longboat Key. Okay, so no problem. We can pick up 2 elephants anyway, right? Yeah, just pick them up out of thin air. We were lucky. We got them. Well, those 2 days when we had this big event, all the food in the park, all the beer was a nickel. We went through 9,800 hot dogs in 2 days, and we bought almost every hot dog out of every supermarket there was. We had peanuts, everything was, and we did the dedication, and it was really rewarding when we finished, and everything went fine. The weather was a little rough that day, but everything went fine. We had a lady come up to him, Jack Peffley and I was 2 of the co-chairmen, and this lady came up and she said, I want to tell you, did it right. And we said, really? She said, I was 7 years old the first time. So we had a lot of fun doing that. Then in 2003, we did the bridge dedication. A beautiful bridge that everybody didn't, not everybody, but a lot of people didn't want. Finally got it, was fantastic. We were meet in the middle, have the cars meet in the middle, and separation. The people at the bridge who built the bridge were just ecstatic. They had never had a dedication. They had this beautiful bridge, and we did the dedication. Just before the parade went up there, we had a storm come up. And one of the ladies, the bridge, and it almost